Welcome to Disabilities Journal. I'm your host, John DiBiase, former executive director of an agency that supports people with disabilities. This is the third show in a series, and today with me are Eileen Egan, executive director of Community Mainstreaming Advocates, and via Zoom we have Assembly Member Melissa Miller. Ms. Miller represents the 20th Assembly District that includes Long Beach. She's also the parent of a son who has a developmental disability, and she serves on the Assembly Committee on Developmental Disabilities. Thank you both for joining me today. When I was the executive director of an agency, I felt that advocacy was one of the primary things that I did in my role. I was always willing to go up to Albany and ask for something, whether it was for money or for services or improvement in services. And I always felt that when I went to my senator or a member of the assembly and said, "Save our services," I always felt like like I was saying, "Save my job." And I knew that when a parent who was always with me, I always brought a parent with me or a self-advocate, and I said, and they said, "Save my services," it resonated quite differently. Eileen. Yes. Let's segue into Eileen. You're preparing now to go up to Albany for legislative days that are coming up, usually around Valentine's Day. I've gotten into a lot of trouble being up in Albany for Valentine's Day. You have talking points. Mm-hmm. Besides those talking points, what in your heart do you want to leave with members?
Well, I think I want all of the people in the legislature to understand how dependent we are on our workforce and how important it is for us to raise them up to a level. We have to raise their compensation so that they can have a living wage. We're having a terrible time recruiting people now, retaining people. Even though people want to work in this field, we don't have enough money to sustain that. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ms. Miller, as a member of the Assembly Committee on Developmental Disabilities, you juggle a couple of different roles. You're not only a member of the legislature, you're also the parent of a gentleman who has a disability. When you hear folks come up and they're going to come to you and they're going to say, you know, we need this, we need that, we need more money. What if you were just advocating and not a member of the assembly? What would you want to leave your member with?
Well, I'm a big believer in be direct in your ask. I think a lot of times, as a parent especially, we're emotional. We're personally invested in what we're asking for because we're living it. So, it's when you get emotional, it can be very easy to kind of, just go on and on and on, and you're talking, and you lose somebody's interest that way. So be direct and have a very clear ask and be focused with that. But I also believe that when I brought my child with me, I did lots of advocacy, and I brought him with me. And yeah, you know what? It was a schlep up to Albany and, a long day going from member to member through the Senate, through the Assembly. But I found that when I had my son with me and they could interact with him and they could see firsthand how what we were asking for was affecting our lives, that made a difference. That resonated with them. So a lot of families, I think, are afraid to do that. They're afraid to either expose themselves, their personal lives. They're afraid of being punished by a provider if they speak out against or say we need more than this. But I think that really the best advocacy is done by those who are willing to share of themselves. It really, I said before, I've had so many different and between senators, assembly members, even I met with the last term's OPWDD commissioner or the Department of Health commissioner. both of them had said to me at different times, I can't stop thinking about your son. I can't stop thinking about what you said to me, that you have to do this. One of them came into my office, just walked past and came into my office in Albany and said, I can't believe you have to bring him up here because we're not able to get him what he needs at home. Yeah. So, that visual, I think, and that personal story is a great advocacy tool.
We've talked a little bit before we came on the air about the partnership between families, agencies, and government.
Yeah.
A lot of our agencies, I know the one that I worked for, was started by parents who needed a play group for their kids because there were no services at all in the late 50s, early 60s. That sort of morphed into parents who expect stuff because they weren't part of that grassroots movement. Eileen, would you like to talk a little bit more about it? It's got to be a nonpartisan and partnership.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that parents today sometimes think that agencies are very set in old ways, and maybe some are. And we certainly have traditional programs that we've been running now for about 40 years. But we're also willing to innovate and develop new programs. That's another thing that I think we need to advocate for, maybe a little bit less regulation so we can be more innovative. I think that would be helpful. We could get more specific about those regulations, but I think families and agencies are much more powerful when they work together. As John said, we need to show agencies aren't advocating to just sustain themselves. We're here, I'm here because the woman who founded my organization 45 years ago has passed away, and I'm taking care of her 67-year-old son. Yeah. He's my responsibility now. So, we want to be there for families, and I hope that they understand that and that we can work together.